Imagine a modern athlete, right? Let's say LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, massive stars.
Exactly. Now imagine they didn't just win championships, but they physically invented the crossover or the forward pass.
Right, totally changed the geometry of the game.
And then, they forced the league to completely rewrite the rule book to stop them from hacking the game.
Oh, and simultaneously released the #1 pop song on Spotify.
Yes. I mean, it sounds impossible, but in the 1880s, one orphan teenager essentially pulled off that exact combination. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
If you're someone who loves hunting for those sudden aha moments where everything just clicks into place, we are looking for the ultimate origin story of sports and celebrity.
And what's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at baseball history today.
Right.
We are looking at the actual blueprint for the entire modern sports entertainment complex. I mean, we're talking about a man who drafted the rules of superstardom in real time, completely from scratch.
So today's deep dive is drawn entirely from a comprehensive Wikipedia biography of Michael Joseph King Kelly. And honestly, okay, let's unpack this because I am just bursting with enthusiasm to figure out how a kid born before the Civil War basically invented the concept of the modern athlete.
Well, his beginnings are about as far from superstardom as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Michael Kelly was born in Troy, New York in 1857 to Irish immigrants. The American Civil War breaks out, his dad joins the Union Army, and the family eventually relocates to Paterson, New Jersey.
Okay.
And by the time Kelly is just 18 years old, both of his parents have passed away.
Oh, wow. So he's an orphan.
Completely. The 1870s census records paint a really stark picture. This teenage orphan is working in a silk mill in Paterson just to survive.
A silk mill. That is rough.
Right. And the leap from that grim industrial survival to international fame is built entirely on one hyper-specialized skill. He could play baseball better than almost anyone alive.
So how does he get out of the mill?
He starts playing semi-pro. There's actually a record of him rejecting an offer of $70 a month from a team in Port Jervis, New York, just to play for a club in Columbus, Ohio.
Got it.
Eventually, a friend recommends him, and he makes his big league debut in 1878 with the Cincinnati Reds.
Okay, so he's in the big leagues.
He is, but early professional baseball was a total financial house of cards. Cincinnati goes broke in 1879. They literally failed to pay the players their last paychecks.
Wait, so Kelly is just stranded?
Yeah, he's stranded.
Uh,
So he writes a telegram to Albert Spalding, who's an executive for the Chicago White Stockings, and it simply says, "Am broke. Send expenses."
I love that. Just straight to the point.
It worked. Spalding fronts the money, and Kelly moves to Chicago in 1880.
And that geographical shift is like the catalyst for everything that follows, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Chicago was the financial engine of the National League. It had the population density, the wealth, and the media apparatus to turn a great player into a bona fide icon.
He was the perfect stage.
Exactly. Chicago gave Kelly the platform, and his personality was just perfectly calibrated for it.
Because he became this wealthy, handsome superstar almost overnight. And instead of buying, a quiet house in the suburbs, he immediately moves into the Palmer House in Chicago.
Which was famously the loudest, brashest, most garish hotel in the country at the time.
Oh, yeah, we're talking marble floors, imported chandeliers, the works. And on the field, he's leading the league in runs, winning batting titles in 1884 and 1886, hitting over .350.
Just dominating.
Yeah, he's the absolute cornerstone of a Chicago team that wins 5 pennants.
But, his value extended far beyond his batting average. He was
Oh.
a box office sensation.
People were paying just to see him.
Literally just to watch him exist on the field.
Yeah.
But that immense drawing power created a really unique economic tension.
How so?
Well, a player living a lavish lifestyle at the Palmer House requires a salary to match, right? And that friction between his celebrity and the team's payroll eventually forces Chicago's hand.
Which brings us to the historic 1887 transaction. Chicago's Albert Spalding sells Kelly to the Boston Beaneaters for a record-shatteringly massive sum of $10,000.
Unheard of money back then.
Right. And immediately, the press dubs him the $10,000 beauty.
Such a great nickname.
It really is. The sources actually note that the nickname was a nod to an actress named Louise Montague. She won a $10,000 contest in 1881 for being the handsomest woman in the world.
So they are explicitly comparing him to a theatrical spectacle.
Exactly. But I want to push back on the economics here for a second, because if you're listening to this, you're probably picturing a modern blockbuster trade, right, where the athlete signs a massive new contract. Did Kelly actually pocket that 10 grand, or was he just treated like an expensive piece of property being swapped between wealthy owners?
Yeah, I definitely caution against comparing it to a modern free agency deal. The underlying labor mechanics were entirely different.
Because of the reserve clause?
Exactly. This is the era of the reserve clause. Once a team signed a player, they owned the exclusive rights to that player's labor in perpetuity. Kelly could not shop himself to the highest bidder.
Wow.
So that $10,000 wasn't a signing bonus. It was essentially a ransom paid directly from the Boston ownership to the Chicago ownership just to acquire his contract.
So he sees literally $0 of that 10 grand.
Not a dime of the transfer fee. In fact, Albert Spalding was so frustrated with Kelly's contract demands prior to the sale that he bragged to the press about it.
What did he say?
He stated that if Kelly didn't sign on Chicago's terms, he would make him eat hay with his horses.
Oh my God.
I know. It really highlights this stark reality. Athletes, even the biggest superstars, were indentured commodities. Boston paid $10,000 for the right to employ him, which placed an unprecedented, staggering burden of expectation squarely on Kelly's shoulders.
Because now he has to justify being the most expensive human commodity in the history of the sport.
Precisely. He felt immense pressure to prove his worth to the Boston fans every single day.
Right.
And that relentless drive to win, to entertain, and to justify that price tag led directly to him inventing strategies and exploiting loopholes that fundamentally altered the geometry of baseball.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Kelly wasn't just highly athletic. He completely rewired how the game was played.
He really did.
Let's look at his legitimate innovations first. The sources credit him with popularizing the hit and run and being the first catcher to back up first base. But let's actually break that down. Why was a catcher backing up first base such a big deal?
Well, think about the rigid way sports are played in their infancy. Before Kelly, players had a strictly geographical view of their positions. A catcher stayed behind home plate. That was his zone.
Like a foosball player just stuck on his bar.
Exactly. Kelly was the first to realize that if a ground ball is hit to the infield, the catcher is the only player on the field with a clear, unobstructed line of sight to a potentially wild throw to first base.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. By sprinting down the line behind the first baseman, he created a physical safety net. He turned a static, stationary position into a dynamic, strategic one.
And then there's his base running. He invented the hook slide.
A total game changer.
Yeah, instead of just running straight into the bag or sliding head-on into the defender, he would slide feet first, but throw his body far to the outside, reaching back to hook the base with his foot just to avoid the tag.
And his sliding technique was so revolutionary that his peers readily admitted they were all just trying to copy him.
Really?
Yeah, Tom Brown, who was a contemporary player, explicitly credited Kelly with inventing that evasive side slide. It became standard practice immediately because it shifted the advantage from the defender to the runner.
That's brilliant.
It was, but his genius wasn't purely physical. It was highly analytical.
Right, because he interrogated the rule book looking for blind spots. For instance, fouling off pitches. If you watch a baseball game today, you know a foul ball counts as a strike.
But in Kelly's era, it didn't.
Wait, it didn't count at all?
Not at all. The rules of early baseball were designed for gentlemen who relied on an honor system of fair play. The assumption was that a batter would genuinely try to hit the ball into play.
And Kelly weaponized that honor system.
Absolutely.
He would intentionally just keep fouling off pitches over and over and over, deliberately frustrating the pitcher and exhausting the defense until he finally drew a walk.
It was a massive loophole.
And it was so incredibly effective that the league actually had to patch the rule book in 1894, making foul bunts count as strikes just to stop him and his copycats.
He was a master of what Cap Anson called trickiness.
Trickiness.
Yeah, Anson noted that Kelly was a genius in the coach's box, distracting fielders and making psychological warfare a part of his competitive strategy. But his most audacious trickery involved exploiting the umpires.
Now, if you're listening to this, you might be thinking, how do you exploit an umpire? We have to remember the physical limitations of the era. Games in the 1880s typically only had one single umpire trying to watch the entire field at once.
Which is a geometric impossibility. You cannot watch a ball hit to the outfield and simultaneously monitor a runner touching second base.
And Kelly knew that. When the lone umpire's back was turned, Kelly was known to just skip bases entirely.
Just run right across the grass.
Literally, he would run from first, cut diagonally across the infield, and head straight to third. The sources cite a 2004 biographical study by Howard W. Rosenberg that found Kelly attempted this brazen base cutting about 4 times in his career.
Did it ever work?
Well, he got called out twice, retreated once, but he successfully got away with it 1 time.
It's pure audacity.
Hmm.
But we also have to look at the ultimate legend of King Kelly, the story that completely defined his mythos.
Yes. Okay, supposedly, Kelly is sitting on the bench during a game. A foul pop-up is hit, but it's clearly out of the reach of his team's catcher, Charlie Ganzel.
Right.
Kelly realizes the ball's dropping near the dugout, jumps up off the bench, shouts that he is substituting himself into the game while the ball is still in the air, catches it, and demands the umpire call the batter out.
I do have to apply some historical rigor here,
Uh-oh, ruin the sun.
just a bit. The source material points out this specific story might be embellished. Baseball historians note there is no contemporaneous newspaper account of this happening in a regular league game.
So where did the story come from?
It was recounted years later by a former teammate, Charlie Bennett. So it may have happened in an exhibition, or it might just be a tall tale. But the legend insists he argued he had as much right to sub in while the ball was in the air as any other time.
Even though the umpire ultimately ruled against him?
Exactly.
Embellished or not, it perfectly captures his philosophy. People called him a cheater for this stuff. But is that fair? Isn't this just the 1880s equivalent of the Silicon Valley move fast and break things mindset? Was he really a cheater? Or was he just the ultimate beta tester for the baseball rulebook, finding the bugs so the developers could patch them?
I'd actually push back slightly on the beta tester analogy.
Really?
Well, a beta tester wants to fix the software for everyone. Kelly wanted to keep the game broken so he could continue exploiting it.
Ah, good point.
If we extend your analogy, the umpires and the league officials were the beleaguered developers trying to patch the code in real time while Kelly kept finding new exploits. If a rule didn't explicitly forbid something, he considered it mandatory to try it if it gave him an edge.
And that combination, his undeniable athletic genius mixed with this highly theatrical, boundary-pushing trickery, made him a massive spectacle.
He was larger than life.
He was too large a personality to be contained by a baseball diamond, which really sets up the next phase of his life perfectly.
It does. Because of that massive personality, Kelly essentially wrote the playbook for modern sports stardom.
How so?
Well, before Kelly, a baseball player was just a guy who played a game.
Yeah.
Kelly transformed the athlete into a pop culture icon. For starters, he's considered the first athlete to popularize autograph signing.
No way.
Yeah, fans would mob him on the streets of Boston on his way to the ballpark just to get his signature.
That is the genuine birth of modern fan culture. And it wasn't just autographs, it was visual representation. I read that prints of a painting of him sliding into second base hung in almost every Irish saloon in Boston.
He achieved ubiquity in a way no athlete had before.
And he also recognized the value of controlling his own narrative, right? In 1888, while playing for Boston, he released a book called Play Ball, Stories of the Ball Field.
Which was a huge deal.
Yeah, it was the very first autobiography ever published by a baseball player. He didn't write it himself. It was ghostwritten by a Boston Globe reporter named Jack Drohan, but the mere fact that a market existed for an athlete's memoir was entirely unprecedented.
And his influence didn't stop at print media. It bled directly into emerging audio technology.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Consider the song Slide, Kelly, Slide.
I read about this in the sources, and it completely blew my mind.
It's wild. It was written in 1889, inspired entirely by his aggressive bass running. And when Edison Studios released it as a cylinder recording, it became America's very first pop hit record.
That's insane.
Prior to Slide Kelly Slide, the only things you could purchase on a cylinder recording were opera performances, religious sermons, or patriotic marches. King Kelly was the subject of the nation's first pop song.
He outsold opera.
He did.
So naturally, Kelly decides he belongs in showbiz himself. He starts a vaudeville career. He teams up with actors like Nat Goodwin. They were both in the Elks Lodge together, which had deep ties to the theater circuit.
Right.
He performs in comedic plays, billing himself as King Kelly, the monarch of the baseball field. His signature bit on stage was reciting the famous poem, Casey at the Bat.
And sometimes he completely butchered the recitation.
But the crowds loved it anyway.
He really did. And, you know, the connection between Kelly and that specific poem is incredibly deep.
How deep?
Well, Ernest Lawrence Thayer wrote Casey at the Bat in 1888. While Thayer later claimed the name Casey came from a non-player he knew, Kelly is overwhelmingly considered the best candidate for being the actual real-life inspiration for the character's swagger and the baseball situations described.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, Kelly was the most famous, colorful player of the era, and Thayer had actually watched him play in San Francisco just before penning the poem.
Let me challenge this vaudeville era a bit, though. When we look at athletes today building media empires like LeBron James producing movies or Tom Brady signing massive broadcasting deals, they're operating as highly calculated businessmen.
Very true.
Did Kelly actually care about being a stage artist, or was this just the 1890s version of an athlete doing goofy local TV commercials to cash in on his fame, like, wearing a poorly fitted suit and reading off cue cards for a quick buck?
Oh, it was undoubtedly closer to the latter, but it was driven by necessity rather than pure ambition.
What do you mean?
Well, a review from the New York Sun of one of his vaudeville performances in 1893 described his clothes as completely ill-fitting. His trousers were too big, his straw hat was a size too small, and he buttoned his jacket wrong.
Oh, wow.
The reporter noted it was impossible to look at him and not laugh, and Kelly was up on stage laughing right along with the crowd. He wasn't a master thespian, he was capitalizing on his fame. But this is where the narrative turns dark.
Right, because the mechanisms of fame were entirely different back then.
Exactly. While Kelly was inventing the concept of off-the-field monetization, he completely lacked the modern infrastructure to protect or grow that wealth.
No safety net.
None. There were no sports agents, no financial advisors, no union representatives. That vacuum, combined with his own habits, led to a stark and incredibly rapid downfall.
Yeah, the back half of Kelly's life is a really tough read. Despite being the most famous athlete in America and bringing in what should have been a fortune through vaudeville and his massive salary, he had absolutely zero financial sense. He spent money significantly faster than he could make it.
His generosity and his vices were legendary, but they systematically dismantled his life.
Just to give you a sense of the scale of this, he was so broke during his playing career that his fans and friends, including other players and even umpires, had to pool their money to buy him a house.
Just to keep a roof over his head.
Right. In 1890, they took up a public subscription. Teammates, fans, and rival captains like Buck Ewing and John Montgomery Ward chipped in. They bought him a $10,000 house in Hingham, Massachusetts, complete with a horse and carriage.
Which is a beautiful gesture, but it highlights a terrifying lack of personal stability.
Completely.
And the worst part is, he couldn't even hold on to that gifted stability.
By 1893, that same house was put up for sale by the town because Kelly couldn't pay a tax bill of a mere $123.
Unbelievable.
He also had a lingering $2,000 mortgage on it. He lost the house his fans bought for him over a tiny fraction of what he used to earn in a single month.
And we know exactly where his money was going. A Boston executive later recounted paying off a $200 bar tab for Kelly, only to visit the bar later that exact same night and be handed a second Kelly tab for $140.
In the 1890s.
Exactly. In the 1890s, those figures are astronomical. That is the equivalent of spending thousands of dollars on drinks in a single evening, repeatedly.
It's just self-destruction in plain sight. He bounces around the end of his career. He manages a team called Kelly's Killers in Cincinnati, plays a few games for the Giants, and even ends up in a minor league in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Which was just sad.
Yeah, the owner there was purely using his fading star power to drive traffic to his streetcar line, and his health gives out just as fast as his bank account.
Tragically fast.
In November of 1894, Kelly is on a boat traveling from New York to Boston to appear at the Palace Theater with a vaudeville troupe called the London Gaiety Girls. He catches a cold on the boat. It quickly turns into pneumonia. She's taken to a hospital in Boston, and he dies. He was only 36 years old.
36. It's a devastatingly sudden end for a man who seemed invincible just a few years prior.
The public reaction was massive, though. 7,000 people passed by his open casket to pay their respects, but behind the scenes, it was a total disaster.
Right, for his family.
His widow, Aggie, was left completely destitute. The National League owners had to pass the hat just to pledge $1,400 to her so she could survive, and she ended up making a living for the rest of her life by sewing. Years later, in an interview, she referred to him simply as an overgrown kid.
There is a remarkably damning quote from a man named George W. Floyd, who acted as a sort of early player agent for Kelly.
What did he say?
Shortly before Kelly died, Floyd said he knew enough to make money for others but never could make anything for himself.
Ooh, So what does this all mean? When you look at Kelly's life dying penniless at 36 while the owners who traded him remain wealthy men, is Kelly's story a tragedy of his own personal irresponsibility and astronomical bar tabs? Or is it a glaring indictment of an early sports system that ruthlessly exploited its very first superstar before any labor rights existed?
I'd argue it is inextricably both, but the labor dynamics are the silent engine of the tragedy.
How so?
Well, you cannot separate Kelly's impulsive, larger-than-life personality from the man who revolutionized the game. However, you also cannot ignore that the system was perfectly designed to extract all of his value while providing absolutely no safety net.
True.
He generated the modern equivalent of millions of dollars in ticket sales, sheet music, and concessions. But because of the reserve clause, because he didn't own his own labor, he couldn't build equity. He was treated as entirely expendable the moment his athletic prowess faded.
It's really wild to think about. So, to you listening, the next time you see a pro athlete acting in a blockbuster movie, selling a signature shoe, or creatively interpreting a rule to gain an edge, you aren't just looking at modern sports, you are looking at the direct lineage of an orphaned 19th century kid from New Jersey who figured out how to make the whole world watch him but couldn't figure out how to protect himself.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Kelly's life is an absolute masterclass in the dual nature of fame. He created incredible cultural value. I mean, he practically invented the concept of sports celebrity while capturing almost none of that lasting value personally.
Yeah.
It is a foundational lesson in the business of entertainment that still echoes through every contract negotiation today.
Absolutely. And it leaves me thinking about this. What if the very traits that make someone a relentless, boundary-pushing genius in their profession, like Kelly's impulsiveness, his theatricality, and his total disregard for the established rules, are the exact same traits that make it impossible for them to navigate the realities of everyday life? Is the genius also the curse? Something to mull over. Thanks as always for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.